screw you, James Gunn. The Guardians films were meant to make me laugh, not emotionally assault me.
For quite a while. But no matter what happens next, the galaxy still needs its guardians. Hello, we come in peace. Come on, Drax. Seriously, dude? No! Ow! Hey!
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to my channel and time for another episode of Luke's Reviews. On today's video, well, the gang are all back together, they're ready for one last hit, and it is sure to be one heck of a ride in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. After saving the galaxy numerous times, the Guardians have set up base on Nowhere. Peter is not in a good way, as he's still grieving the loss of Gamora, and the rest of the team are a bit unsure of what is next for them. But when one of their team is attacked, it leads them on an adventure to uncover the tragic backstory of Rocket and put a stop to the diabolical plans of the High Evolutionary. I think everyone can agree that 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy was one of the most pleasant surprises in the comic book movie genre of all time. No one knew if a ragtag group of heroes that also featured a talking raccoon and tree would ever work, and yet it's almost impossible to believe it wouldn't. The Guardians are beloved, and James Gunn has done a tremendous job at bringing them to life in such an endearing way. But they say that all good things must come to an end, and for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the end is in sight for this current roster of the Guardians and for James Gunn's tenure in the MCU. But boy oh boy, do they go out in style. I regard the first Guardians as one of my favourite comic book movies of all time. It is endlessly rewatchable. However, for Volume 2, I was a bit let down. I thought that it focused on the jokes way too much for my liking, that it did begin to compromise the plot and characters. But it all got back on track with the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, which I found to be delightful and reignited that emotional spark that I thought was missing in Volume 2. Well, I'm pleased to say that Volume 3 continues the Guardians' run of success within the MCU, but more importantly, is a perfect conclusion of the Guardians trilogy. Each of the central characters get a heck of a lot to do in this film, with hardly any of them ever feeling underdeveloped at any point. Chris Pratt as Peter is perhaps the most dejected we've seen him before. It's honestly among some of Pratt's best work, but for Peter himself, he's really put through the ringer in this, and is tasked with facing grief and loss head on, no matter how much he wishes that he could just shy away from it. Zoe Saldaña returns as Gamora, but she is substantially different to the Gamora that we knew before. This simply isn't the same Gamora who fell in love with Peter and was a Guardian. This Gamora is jaded, ruthless, and really quite mean. But Saldaña is clearly enjoying having this new spin on her character, and I think that she does a really, really good job. As for Drax, honestly, anyone who is still expecting him to be the Drax the Destroyer that he is in the comics, that isn't happening. Gunn has clearly shaped Drax into his own mold, and now in this third volume, you kind of get that payoff. Now, admittedly, I've actually been quite critical of how Drax has been presented, but here in Volume 3, I thought that it all came together quite nicely, and Bautista is the type of actor that just puts his absolute all into a role like this. Karen Gillan is also an actress that has made the role of Nebula her own. To think that she kind of began in this series as a stone cold killer and is now one of the more compassionate members of the team, it's really quite a brilliant character arc for her. Groot is, of course, adorable and as badass as ever. He probably has the least to do in this film, often acting as the heavy in whatever situation they find themselves in, but you know, he's Groot. It's impossible not to love him. Mantis also really comes into her own, seemingly acting as the glue to hold the team together. Klementieff gets some amazing badass moments too that initially I had no idea that the character of Mantis was even capable of. And then there's Rocket. Oh boy. If you've seen some of the marketing for this film, you might be thinking that Rocket is almost like the central character of this film. And in some respects, you'd be right. This is predominantly Rocket's story. We learn quite a lot about Rocket's backstory. And oh my god, it is one of the most heartbreaking backstories ever. If you are in any way sensitive to animal abuse, there are going to be a lot of scenes that are going to be tricky for you. But learning this and seeing how Rocket became the Rocket that we first met on Xandar all those years ago, it helps piece together his character in ways that we hadn't initially conceived before. And through Sean Gunn's motion capture work, along with Bradley Cooper seriously giving it his all as the voice, Rocket is now, without question, one of the most fascinating and endearing characters of the MCU. And through Rocket's backstory, we find our villain of the film, Chukwudi Iwuji's High Evolutionary, a being whose sole purpose is to develop species to their most advanced state of evolution, regardless of the countless lives and worlds he needs to slay to complete his mission. This dude is evil, and I mean full-blown, psychotic, unsympathetic evil. As soon as you bring in a villain who is open to animal abuse, they are immediately unredeemable. And Iwuji, with his theatrical background, he is chewing this role for all it is worth. He is fantastic here. He is also one of the most deplorable characters within the MCU, period. As for other antagonists that the Guardians square off against, we finally are getting a payoff in regards to that post-credit sting that we saw in Volume 2 as Adam Warlock officially steps onto the scene. He's played by Will Poulter, and he's good. It's definitely not the approach that I thought they were going to take with Adam Warlock. They are going the more comedic route. He's a bit of a bumbling idiot a lot of the time. Partially because they treat him as that he isn't evolved properly. But I don't know, that just wasn't the approach that I was expecting. It's funny. It makes for some good jokes, and Will Poulter's a great comedic talent. But I thought that they could have utilised that character a lot more and a lot better than they actually did. And as well, you've also got Kraglin and Cosmo, who are great fun, but they are very comfortable being content in the background. So, with all the characters on top form, how's the story? Initially, I didn't think that it got off to an amazing start. I think it would have been more beneficial to just spend a little bit more time on Nowhere with the Guardians so we get an idea of where they're all at mentally, as opposed to just getting straight on with it, because it feels like the movie's legs are wanting to move at 1,000,000 miles a minute, but the body is a little bit more restrained. But thankfully, James Gunn is fully aware that he has 2.5 hours to work with here, so he's able to spread that evenly throughout the movie. But once we are underway, it's like sitting back in a comfortable armchair, watching a band that you love play their greatest hits for one final time. It's fun. It's really, really fun. It's a proper galactic adventure with James Gunn crafting some hilarious set pieces, but also dialing the action up to 11. There are some jaw-dropping action set pieces in this film, one of which takes place in a wanna throughout a hallway that is hands down one of the most incredible action sequences in all of the MCU. It's amazing. Volume 3 is also a lot more mature than the other Guardians films, and for that fact, a lot of other MCU projects too. The violence is that bit more brutal and sadistic. Gunn is really stretching that 12A rating to its limit, to the point where I will say to parents, if you're watching and you have younger MCU fans, I'd just be a little hesitant with this one, because there is some really disturbing imagery, some unsettling subject matter The 12A is there for a reason. It's only advisory that you bring anyone under 12, but maybe if you've got any little ones, this might be... You might want to wait until you can maybe watch this in the comfort of your own home. It's also really sad. I know that seems like a really simple point to make, but wow, this movie's really emotional. For most of the film, all of the characters, especially Rocket, are suffering greatly with bleak and hopeless circumstances. There are jokes, but they're not as dominant. Gunn instills an overwhelming sense of pathos and finality. This is the farewell tour, and it is very bittersweet to see them go. But I promise it's not all doom and gloom. Like I said, there are jokes. Most of them are hysterical. And of course, it's a Guardians film. It's a James Gunn film, so you know that that soundtrack is going to be friggin' awesome. And it is. There's plenty of songs to tap your toes to, and maybe shed a few tears as well. 2 post-credit scenes as normal, both of which don't necessarily address anything to do with the multiverse saga. Neither does the film, really. This kind of keeps in its own isolated bubble, which I kind of appreciated. But the 2 post-credit scenes don't really set anything up as such. It's more giving you an idea of where some of these characters are left, in what state they're in. Maybe there are opportunities to pick up with them later on, but like I said, primarily this movie is closure. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is by no means a perfect entry into the MCU, but I'd wager it is a perfect conclusion to this Guardians trilogy. James Gunn bows out of this cinematic universe in spectacular fashion, crafting a movie that is distinctly him and sparing no expense when it comes to walloping you in the face with overwhelming emotion. The character arcs are all handled fantastically well, the villain is truly loathsome, and Gunn doesn't squander his opportunity for another galactic spectacle. At times, it can be a difficult watch, purely due to disturbing subject matters, but if you've been a fan of this team from the start, then you'll be very happy as they take this curtain call. So long, Guardians. You'll be missed. So, I'm gonna give Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's safe to say that as sad as it is to see James Gunn leave the MCU, the DCU is gonna be in good hands. Anyway guys, those are my thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Let me know, have you had a chance to see the film yet? What did you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And my question to you, I want to know, of the Guardians project, I'm talking Volume 1, Volume 2, the Holiday Special, and Volume 3, which one is your favourite? But that is all we have time for here today, so thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Hello, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, make sure to click that like button, and if you aren't already, click that subscribe button too.